Folklore is a curious thing. It goes without saying that over here at Top 5 Scary Videos we've had a bit of a penchant for exploring all things folklore, be it in both modern literature and horror, as we trace back the same cultural bones that have since been laid in the foundations of all things folk. Although profoundly similar to the folklore of wider Europe, Celtic folklore in particular has some of the most bizarrely unique concepts of the same set of cautionary tales that still find their place in modern horror to this day. So in that case, let's figure out where it came from. Hello horror fans, what's going on? And once again welcome back to the scariest channel on YouTube, Top 5 Scary Videos. As per usual, I'll be your horror host Jack Finch. Today we curiously take a look at the top 5 most terrifying creatures from Celtic folklore. Roll the clip. For the curious amongst you, that scene was from 2019's The Hole in the Ground, written and directed by Lee Cronin, that just so happens to feature one of Ireland's most unnerving facets of folklore as its titular horror villain. Also, as a side note, that film was surprisingly great, and although it has flown under the radar since its release, it's certainly worth a look-see if you're hankering for some folklore in horror. So yeah, consider this your most honourable of honourable reminders. Yeah, that works. Anyway, on with the show. Kicking off at number 5. The Questing Beast. And what better place to begin our folkloric journey than with the ultimate adversary of all things monster hunting in the long history of the British Isles, the Questing Beast. And yeah, whilst the name may be a dead giveaway, in folklore there is perhaps no other creature that is quite as bizarre as this one. Otherwise known as the Beaglatistion or the Barking Beast, this particular creature is a key monster in Arthurian legend, and in the forgotten days of King Arthur's Britain, his Knights of the Round Table, most prominently Sir Palomides and Sir Percival, made it their quest to hunt this thing down. As the legend goes, this strange creature had the head and neck of a snake, the body of a leopard, the haunches of a lion, and the cloven feet of a hart. The name, primarily Beaglatistion, comes from the great noise that it emits from its belly, a barking noise that allegedly sounded like 30 couple hounds questing. Bizarrely enough though, the legend of the Questing Beast is allegedly a variant of the mythological medieval view on giraffes. Do with that information as you will, but yeah, that's anyone's guess. Perhaps the most memorable appearance of the Questing Beast in Arthurian legend was in Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur, where after he had an affair with his half-sister Morgan, they didn't know they were related at the time, just FYI, the Questing Beast appears to Arthur in a disturbing vision drinking from a clear and still pool. In that same dream, he sees a prophecy that foretells Mordred's destruction of Camelot, and he then intertwines the two. Later on, Merlin reveals to Arthur that the Questing Beast was actually born of a human woman, a princess who lusted after her own brother. Sound familiar? While in the legend told by Merlin, eventually the brother was sentenced to death by their own father and was torn to shreds by rabid dogs, the same sound that the Questing Beast made. Essentially, Arthur saw his own near downfall in a dream, and the Questing Beast was the result of that. Yeah, exactly. Star Wars ain't got nothing on this. Swinging in at number 4, the Derek Doer. As William Congreve wrote in his 1697 play The Morning Bride, "Nor hell a fury like a woman scorned." The Derek Doer is perhaps Ireland's most tragic and fearsome tale of that fact, one that is still whispered at grave sites and burials to this day. Surprisingly enough, in terms of horror, the Derek Doer is perhaps a lot more recognisable than we may have first imagined. In fact, loosely meaning red blood sucker, this terrifying visage of folklore horror is the closest that Celtic mythology has come to detailing the archetypal vampire. As the legend goes, thousands of years ago, she was a legendary beauty with blood-red lips and pale blonde hair, and her true name has since been lost to the ages, overshadowed by the folklore villain she became. As kind as she was beautiful, the Derek Doer was the envy of every clan in Ireland, and suitors lined up to win her hand in marriage. As fate would have it though, this sweet-natured girl fell in love with a local peasant, an equally handsome man who was kind and well-natured too, but alas, he was penniless. Eventually, the girl's father instead agreed for an old and violently cruel man to marry her, securing a fortune in the process. He kept her locked in a tower and had an affinity for making her bleed. Day after day, he tortured her, locked away in a tower cell, while she waited in vain for the kind peasant boy to somehow come and rescue her. That hope alone kept her alive for many months, but one day, when all hope was gone, she took her own life. As the legend tells it, the Derek Doer is buried in a small churchyard near Strongbow's Tree in the southeast of Ireland. But that wasn't the end of her. In death, she rose from the earth that same night she was buried, driven mad by the half-remembered visions of her own blood welling on her own skin, thirsty for revenge. As they tell it, every night the Derek Doer rises as the red blood drinker, hunting down young men in a blind and natural revenge. She calls to them in a strange, haunting siren song that lingers in their mind as they sleep, where they eventually follow her to her grave and she feasts on them. The Derek Doer is as tragic as it is violent, and it's a cautionary tale that leaves little to be desired. Next up at number 3, the Queer Tonic. And on the same theme as the Derek Doer, there is perhaps no other female figure of folklore that is more terrifying than the legendary Queer Tonic. And this one, instead of drawing upon the tragic image of the forsaken daughter turned ravenous blood-drinking vampire, this one instead takes the visage of the mother. And not just any archetypal mother. No, oh no, but instead the mother of the devil himself, the fire spitter, the mother of all demons, and one of the greatest adversaries in the whole of Irish mythology. As the legend goes, when the planet was nothing but a swirling mass of vapour, water and rock, Queer Tonic was hatched deep in the molten core of the planet. There for eons upon eons she waited, patiently biding her time before we humans stepped into existence. You see, the fire spitter needed food for her children to feast upon, and guess what? We were that food. And in the early days of humanity, the mother of demons and her children feasted upon us in a frenzy. However, there is one turning point of this legend where something remarkable happened, and believe it or not, but the legend of Queer Tonic is actually inexplicably tied to the patron saint of Ireland himself, Patrick. Well, he went by Patricius back then, but still. Strangely enough, when the legend of St. Patrick is attributed to his removal of all of the snakes from Ireland in some folkloric canons, those very same snakes are instead the fire spitter and her children. As the legend goes, Patrick had traced Queer Tonic's home back to the cave on Station Island, which also allegedly served as a portal to Hell. There they battled for 2 days and 2 nights before the fire spitter retreated through the swamps and poisoned all of the wells on her way. Eventually the pair fought in a great lake where the mother of demons swallowed St. Patrick whole as they both sank into the cold, shadowy darkness of Loch Derg. Thankfully for him though, St. Patrick tore his way out of her belly and she was banished to the dark, miserable depths for eternity. Thank you very much, St. Patrick. Coming in at number 2, the Changeling. Because we can't really talk about Celtic folklore without describing some of the most prolific entities in the mythos of both Celtic and European culture. The Fae, fairies. In Ireland, the Tuatha De Danann and the Ail She, the people of the mounds, and a race of mythical and mystical entities that have since established themselves in playing some of the most important roles in Celtic folklore. In Irish and Scottish mythology specifically, the Tuatha De Danann were considered to be the people of the goddess Danu, the mother goddess, and later they eventually evolved into a far more supernatural design. It is said that the fairies of Celtic folklore could bestow great blessings and equally dangerous curses, and perhaps one of the most terrifying examples of that is with the Changeling, a fairy child left behind in place of a stolen human child. Now, although the theme itself has been used to explain away many unexplained afflictions, diseases and disorders of the time, the cultural significance of the Changeling, particularly in horror literature and cinema, has been pretty staggering. You see, it plays on one key parental fear of a child becoming uncanny, a split double of their former self. A changeling is typically identified by a number of unusual traits. In Irish legend, a fairy child may appear sickly or will cease to grow in size like a normal child would. In many folklore legends, these changelings grow notable physical characteristics. They may grow a beard or grow long in the tooth, literally. Quickly they may display an intelligence that is far beyond their years, as well as develop the power of foresight. They will know things that should be outside of their knowledge, harnessed by the power of the Ail She. In some very rare cases, it was the very elderly of a fairy that was replaced as a changeling, so that the old fairy could instead live in comfort, being coddled by its human parents without them ever knowing. In folk legend, protecting oneself from a changeling was of the utmost importance, and simple charms such as an inverted coat or open iron scissors left where the child slept were required to ward them off. Beware the changeling, that's all I can say. And finally, coming in at number 1 spot, Baloo. And truth be told, we can't really have any other creation of folklore as our number 1 spot, Baloo, the big bad baddie of Celtic mythology, is a figure that features most proficiently in the mythos of Irish and Scottish folklore, whereas on the one hand we have the mythical Tuatha Dé Danann, on the other we have the Fomorians, a supernatural race of monstrosities who shamble their way from the bowels of the earth to wreak havoc on we humans and engage in an eternal battle with the Fae. In Celtic mythology, this guy is the tyrant leader of them all. He is often described as a giant with one single large eye that wreaks destruction wherever it casts its gaze. Where have we heard that one before? Perhaps derived from the common Celtic word Balaros, meaning the deadly one, Balor is the be-all and end-all of destruction and devastation in the ancient history of the British Isles. Believed to be the personification of blight and drought, it was written in prophecy that Balor would eventually be slain by his own grandson, Lug, who would become the storm god of Celtic mythology and bring an end to the suffering that Balor wrought. From his fortress on Tory Island, in many myths and legends, Balor is described as a giant eye at the top of a tower that when opened carves a path of destruction in its wake. As many legends tell it, once open, it could destroy entire armies with a single glance. Although in many other instances Balor is a humanoid figure that walks beside men, as some folklorists described, he had a single eye in his forehead, a venomous fiery eye. There were always 7 coverings over this eye, and one by one Balor removed them. With the first the bracken began to wither, with the second the grass became copper coloured, with the third the woods and the timber began to heat, with the fourth smoke came from the trees, with the fifth everything grew red, with the sixth it sparked, and with the seventh they were all set on fire and the whole countryside was ablaze. You see, whichever way you spin it, Balor was the personification of pretty much all evil in Celtic mythology and folklore, and when it comes to big bad baddies, yeah, they don't get much nastier than this guy. Well, there we have it, folks, our list of the top 5 most terrifying creatures from Celtic folklore. What do you guys think? Do you agree, disagree? Have any more to add to this list, then let us know your thoughts down in the comment section below, as well as any choice picks of your own. Before we depart from today's video though, let's first take a quick look at some of your more creative comments from over the past few days. First up, Gabriel Tadeo says, "Hey Jack of the Two Coats, are you a dungeon/game master? Because you have such a talent for spinning a story together, bringing myth and legend and terror to ear holes and eyeballs, funneling down into our minds, bringing it all to terribly terrific life. Love you Jack, and top 5 scary videos." Oh, that's so nice. Well, Gabriel, what a brilliant description, and thank you very much. I am not a dungeon master though, but I have the utmost respect for anyone that can DM a campaign, because that is some commitment. Yeah. The thing is, I just enjoy playing the game too much. Charisma is just too much fun. Charisma's too good. And finally, Mel M says, "Jack, can you get a Twitter? Love this vids, great movie recommendations." Well, thank you very much, Mel M, and much obliged. And I do have a Twitter. You can follow me at JawFinch. Consider this my shameless Twitter plug. Yeah, I went there. Thank you, Mel M. Anyway, on that note, unfortunately that's all we've got time for in today's video. Just stick around all the way until the end. If you were a fan of this video, or just top 5 scary videos in general, then please be a dear and hit that thumbs up button, as well as that subscribe bell, and I'll be seeing you in the next one. As per usual, I've been your horror host, Jack Finch. You've been watching top 5 scary videos, and until next time, you take it easy.